Department, Public Works Department, Parks and Rec, and Chief Code Enforcement Officer and Assistant City Manager, Medcop Chinsky, did a lot of work in helping businesses deal with how to remove graffiti, how to create more preventive measures with certain materials that are more or less, well, I wouldn't say completely graffiti-proof, but would be easier to remove. There was a significant cost, and that is a crime. It's a criminal mischief, and unfortunately, that type of activity, spray painting on walls and things like that, and the North Bridge, as you mentioned, are things that are done under cover of night and hard to catch somebody in the act. I do know that they did arrest a man from Bennington, Vermont, because the police, doing their due diligence, discovered that there was sort of a tagging clique that liked to brag about their exploits. There was a young man from Bennington who was caught and arrested, and I believe he did at least pay a fine, if not spend time in jail. It is an ongoing issue with the graffiti, but the city has been responding, and I'm sure how much it's cost, at least a reasonable estimate, would be readily available already. Councilor O'Connor, did you have something?
I do. I just want to say, Councilor Filio's letter, it's my understanding, when I read it, part of that does fall under the graffiti with the chalk, not just permanent graffiti with paint or some kind of marking that is not washed off. I just want to reiterate, we do have a state law, 634-2, criminal mischief. Roman numeral 3 talks about all other criminal mischief as a misdemeanor, class B, where it's not, it's an arrestable offense, but again, there's going to be discretion in some of those cases. So we have to be, I want to be careful with the go forward another ordinance or talk about another ordinance where already got state law that's in place.
Are you saying you're okay going forward asking staff to do more research, or?
I'm okay with more research, more time, more research, so we can find out if, the Keene police and the prosecutor for the city consider chalking criminal mischief, if they will go forward with something like that, if there was a case. And again, it depends on, there's a lot involved there. Each case is different.
Councilman Manley?
Well, I guess in listening to everybody, there were a couple themes that jumped out to me that I almost got more confused as we went on, and that is art versus graffiti and temporary versus permanent. So it seems like a really, seems really complicated to me, and I'm wondering how maybe you could ask staff how they feel about tackling some of those issues. If they would see that as part of the research, I guess, is my question.
Do you have a particular staff member you want to ask that question to?
Leave it up to staff to decide which one.
Well, you have to call on somebody.
Oh,
Or
I
someone
do?
has to raise their hand. That's how it works. If you want to ask that question, then
Okay.
throw a dart. There's a number.
Throw a dart, city manager?
So the question is, how do we proceed from this point relative to staff research, and what extent should that research cover?
Yes.
That's art.
Art versus, yes, art, yes.
All right. Well, clearly we've had a lot of testimony here this evening. We know the pros and cons as they've been expressed relative to the issues. I would think that the city attorney's office would now have the opportunity to work with other staff members, the police chief and others, relative to researching this. Instead of bringing the ordinance back, they could bring back their research, and then possibly as a first step, a second step would then be to direct them to proceed with whatever option they think was appropriate. or you could ask them to come back directly with an ordinance. So I think you have several options here. One would be a several step process, one would be more immediate.
Councilman Murray, and then I think Councilor Jones.
I guess, thank you, city manager, I like the two-step process.
Well, I'll weigh in my 2 cents, because I guess I should. And I'm sure there'll be enough. We heard a lot of things tonight that had to do with the issue of chalking and or graffiti, but also I heard a lot of things tonight that concern me about opinions and groups and factions in town behaving in ways that personally I don't think are appropriate. People are getting hurt physically, seriously. People are being offended and insulted in many ways by language and behavior. We've heard reports of people being followed. We've heard some descriptions of what has been chalked in the square, certainly not my taste, but there's also the issue of, well, we are entitled to free expression, and we do have First Amendment rights. The other concern is about the economic detriment to the city because of this behavior. I think that's a separate issue. I don't want staff coming back with research on that, because whatever concerns our community have economically have to do with factors that are well beyond our borders, unfortunately. I think that the presence of certain individuals doing certain things in Central Square is not a deal breaker if somebody is coming here to maybe start a business. If that's all they see, sure, but there's a lot more to Keene than Central Square, and there is a lot about Keene that is Central Square. I also know that the city has a history of dealing with quote-unquote unruly behavior and I've mentioned this many meetings, I'll mention it again because I like mentioning it. I think it was in 1839 or 1838, because there were rowdy adolescents with nothing better to do hanging around downtown where the Corner News is now, Gilboa Ave, and being drunk, being publicly drunk. And a number of citizens were not okay with that. It was offensive to their families. They were uncomfortable because they did not live a life based on values that they saw were negative, and they probably were in these youth. But as a result, they banned alcohol. That ban lasted a year because it didn't make a bit of difference as to what they were concerned about. And I think what I'm getting at, because I don't want to waste any more time, is there are deeper issues here that have to do with the community and how we get along with each other, whether we like each other or not. What troubles me as a citizen of this city, as a member of the city council, but also somebody who watches the news, not much, because it's all the same, is that there's just too much polarity, too many factions who want to have their point of view only expressed and tolerated and not others. That's what's going to destroy any society or any community. And I hope as we go forward, whatever this committee decides, whatever this council decides, we weigh in on preserving a balance and not creating an issue that will only cause more heartache, more problems, more involvement with our city legal resources in dealing with something that really has to do, I think, ultimately with personal responsibility. So with my grandstanding done, that's part of the perks of being chair. I'm ready to hear what's next from any committee members. If you want to make a motion or want to talk more, you want to make it? Sure.
Okay, I would move that the Municipal Service Facility and Infrastructure Committee direct staff to research the possibility of an enforceable graffiti ordinance and report back to this committee.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion among committee members and also, well, Councilor Jones?
I specifically did not mention draft an ordinance, okay? I said report back. We want to hear options.
Yeah, we heard the motion. Awesome. Stuck at you, right? Yes, it's not an ordinance, we're just... Any members of the public want to make a comment on the proposed ordinance? If you do, I just ask that it be brief. I think we've covered most of the ground we're covering. The ordinance is whether or not to ask staff to do more research on this topic.
Yeah.
Sir, please state your name and...
Daryl Masterson, Willow Street. If you're going to proceed with doing a little bit of research, he's going to hate me for saying this, but I recommend speaking with Rhett Lamb in regards to enforceability of such an ordinance. I know he's had issues with some of the code enforcement that Keene currently has.
The planning director, you mean Rhett Lamb, or Med Kopczynski, who's the...
Rhett Lamb is the one that has mentioned to me
Okay.
that there's been issues going through the court process, trying to enforce like parking on the lawn and things like that. So, yeah, I'll throw his name under the bus and just say.
Well, no, thank you, and I know he appreciates it sincerely, and I'm sure he would be part of any discussion on the staff.
Just wanted to throw that one
I'd
out
be
there.
surprised if he wasn't, so thank you for bringing that up. Any other comments?
I just have a quick one.
Sure.
I'm wondering if someone can research who will be paying to repair the Civil War monument. It does have a permanent peace sign from a year ago, which I'm aware Andy Bohannon had addressed at that time. And I would like to know if that is going to be repaired by the city, or will it be repaired by, a local veterans group? Does the Cheshire Historical Society get involved? So I would like to know how it's going to be repaired. Thank you.
We will try to get back to you. That isn't about the motion, but I think that question could be answered. We have your name. I don't know if there's any city staff that can comment directly. Bohannon isn't here, but we will try to get back to you. I would suggest calling the city clerk's office in a week. I think we'd have an answer by then. Motion has been made and seconded. Current discussion. I'm ready for a vote. All those in favor? It's unanimous, none opposed. I want to thank everybody again. This was painful but probably necessary gathering this evening. In some respects, it's also very positive as well. We have no other items on the agenda this evening. We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Good job.
3 cheers for DPRK. If you're like real DPRK, at the end we have to get up and all applaud enthusiastically and cheer. Yeah, Charles.
How do you guys think it went?
Pretty good.
I just hit that. My mom had one of those and it did wonderful. Good job, Garret.
Thank you.
At one point, I was
No.
How's it going, Nako?
I'm doing good.
I really appreciate what you did for Rich Paul.
You just
I
sprayed me
just
a little
can't
bit, man.
I can't express how much I appreciate it.
Alright, yeah, man, you just sprayed me with your spit. That's gross. That guy, he sprays when he talks. It's disgusting.
What did he say?
He calls me a narc for Rich Paul getting busted.
You and that?
Yeah, I guess he doesn't like the police or something.
And he left some of himself behind on your face.
Yes, he did.
You could have done with that.
Sure. I wanted to speak to, it was Randy's brother, I think it was.
Oh, yeah, that guy?
Randy's brother, the doctor.
Oh, the lawyer sounding guy?
Yeah. Well, the funny thing about when they brought up Washington, D.C., do you know that spot in front of the Capitol, in front of the White House? Oh. Would you mind talking on camera a little bit about like your testimony earlier? Like, could I interview you?
In what context?
Well, I'll just ask some questions about like the points you're making, and maybe bring up some of my concerns. And I'll upload the whole video raw, so I won't be like cutting it or anything.
Let's see. So I have about a minute.
Okay, cool. So you spoke today at the graffiti ordinance hearing here at City Hall in Keene, and you brought up how in some parts of Washington, D.C. it's illegal to chalk. They have an enforceable ordinance. Are you aware of anyone getting arrested for chalking in D.C. or getting in trouble?
There are arrests in D.C., but they have all been affirmed by the courts. Now, the question is whether the Manchester case, as you brought up, comes to bear, and it's interesting that the case has yet to be appealed. However, we do look at the Supreme Court law on the First Amendment, which would override that of any state court based on the principle of stare decisis. The Supreme Court ruling would overtake any state ruling on the First Amendment because of the hierarchy of the courts. So in that regard, if it were to eventually be appealed to the Supreme Court, it is likely, but of course not guaranteed, because no one ever knows what the 9 justices are going to do, that appeal would be accepted based on the fact that there are limitations to free speech, and those limitations are based on the ideal that any restriction on speech needs to be narrowly tailored. So you couldn't have a broad-based, we can't have anybody speaking on the common, no signs in the common, nobody's allowed to walk in the common. It needs to be narrowly tailored and for a legitimate public interest, such as preserving the historic district. Now, if you were to have a citywide ban on no chalking anywhere in the city, obviously that would be unrealistic. For example, in Wheelock Park, it may be perfectly acceptable for an individual to create a spot square. That we, of course, want to allow political speech in the city. We want to be able to have people hand out flyers. We want to have people be able to put up posters and signs in their yards. A great example, and this comes from the University of Florida School of Law, is that we want somebody to be able to walk down Marlborough Street advertising their political views. We don't want them using a bullhorn at 3 in the morning. One of those is an acceptable form of free speech. One of those is something that would not be protected under the First Amendment. Mm-hmm. So it's not whether or not there's free speech. I think we all want to agree with free speech, and as soon as we bring up free speech, it becomes a bit of a red herring. It's like bringing up puppy dogs and rainbows. Everybody is in favor of it, but where does the case law come down? And that's really one of those narrow things that's more difficult to discern. But in this area, the Supreme Court has been clear again and again and again, narrowly tailored, specific government interest.
One aspect of Washington, D.C. that Keene, New Hampshire does not share is that there are designated free speech zones in Washington, D.C. Like, for example, in front of this the White House, there's an area where people are not allowed to stand, they're not allowed to sit. They're allowed to have signs, but they have to remain moving. And if you stop moving, you can be arrested. I know I wouldn't want to see those sorts of areas here in Keene, so I'd rather just the whole area be a free speech zone. I know, like, Jehovah's Witnesses and different political interests will set up booths on sidewalks in Keene, and as far as I know, that's not restricted in any way.
I don't think Jehovah's Witnesses booths are restricted, but I also don't know the statute in that particular area. What I would think I would want to see in Keene, and that's exactly what happened tonight. Let's research it. Nothing has been decided in stone tonight. All the council or the committee decided tonight. Let's research it. I think that's pretty reasonable. There's no harm in doing research.
Okay, sure. Thanks for speaking with me.
They'll help you do that. Okay. The area here is called Gamma Crime. And the building sits back in the front. You just go see them, and they can help you out with what you need to do, all the legal stuff that has to be done.
Okay, because I want to do right things.
Yep.
Well, it's obviously disappointing that they're going to even waste the city staff's time with something ridiculous like this. Randy Filio actually said on the radio this morning that kids who want to play hopscotch will have to play it in their driveways and not downtown. So really, he is talking about an all-out ban on chalking. At least that's what he wants. What the city staff will come up with is another question. But I mean, just ridiculousness to the max here in Keene.
Anything else you want to share?
No, appreciate you asking. Want to take it off?
Yeah. Sure, why not?
Have a good night, guys.
I thought it went well and that all the people who tried to, it sounded like they were trying to make people look bad as opposed to expressing their issues.
You mean, okay, yeah.
Like the opposition, so to speak.
Right.
Adios. Oh yeah, I'm parked out back.
I love that thing about the